Hello everyone and welcome back to another review on the channel. Today we are going to be talking about Venom, Let There Be Carnage, which we've been waiting since 2018 for our sequel to Venom, which, yes and no. Honestly, I didn't really like the first Venom movie too much. I thought it was an entertaining bad movie. I think the whole plot and the story and the villain of it was so bland and boring, but Tom Hardy as Venom and as Eddie Brock was really entertaining to watch. That banter that they had, that type of tone that the movie had, I thought strangely worked in some ways. Other ways it just did not work at all. But I did end up liking that character, and especially the casting of Tom Hardy as that character. And I think all of that still applies to this movie with Tom Hardy and Venom. I think all of that is very, very entertaining. That banter that those characters have with each other is what I want to watch in this movie. And so in those regards, I think this movie is extremely entertaining, but I don't think this is a good movie. But again, it's absurd. It's an absurdly entertaining bad movie. Honestly, I think I might like them equally as much as each other. Maybe I like this one a bit more for certain reasons, but when I get into those things, I will be talking about spoilers. So this will be a spoiler review for Venom, Let There Be Carnage for many reasons, which I will get into the after credit scene later in this review. Make sure you guys stick to the ending when I talk about that. But let's just talk about the movie first and foremost. So Venom, Let There Be Carnage, what is it about? Well, it's about Eddie Brock. He's interviewing Cletus Kasady, who is a serial killer who is in prison, and he's talking to him, and he's, trying to, start up his journalism career once again that he lost in the last movie. And so it picks up pretty much right where that one left off. He's kind of in the dumps still, although he has this new friendship with Venom, and that banter is still going on, and he's interviewing this Cletus Kasady character, and he gets a scoop on him, and he finds these bodies that he had hidden for so long, and Cletus Kasady gets some sort of vengeance against him or vendetta against him because he was the one who kind of outed him, who kind of started the process of him actually going through the death penalty process. And so for the villain of this movie, I guess there is some sort of personal vendetta from Cletus Kasady against Eddie Brock's character, and so I guess that had a fine setup. I think Woody Harrelson as his character wasn't nearly as bad as I thought he was going to be in this movie. He wasn't terrible. I think at times he's way too hammy, but he does fit the tone of this movie, which this movie is very tonally over the top and ridiculous and just kind of goofy, and so he fits that version of this character that they were going for. This movie is definitely self-aware, and it gets exactly what it's going for. It's kind of like Malignant in some ways, where Malignant wasn't trying necessarily to be, a great movie with great dialogue and all these great things. It was very over the top and very corny and very campy on purpose, and that's exactly what Woody Harrelson is doing in this movie. That's why you get Woody Harrelson to play a crazed, goofy serial killer character, but that's just not what I wanted out of the character. I wanted something a little more serious. I wanted something a little more darker, but I guess we just have to kind of accept the fact that this is how these Venom movies are, because the first movie had those goofy moments, and a lot of people loved those goofy moments. Me in particular, I really loved him jumping in the tank of water and eating those lobsters. I thought that was the best part of the movie, honestly. The goofiness and the campiness of that aspect of the first Venom movie made it entertaining, and so they went with that and they just ran with it. And so in that way, honestly, I do think Woody Harrelson's villain as Cletus Kasady and as Carnage was a better villain than Riot was in the first one, because I think Riot was just a really bland villain, especially the performance with the Carlton Drake character. I love that actor, but I think the tone of it didn't match the campiness that the movie was trying to go for, and this one at least it does match. And I think there are some story elements with this character that I don't think worked at all, and that was the whole thing with Naomie Harris's character. Honestly, I like a lot of these actors. Naomie Harris is a fantastic actress. I just don't really know. I get the purpose of her character, because in a lot of ways this movie is also a romantic comedy, and so the villain had to have a romantic comedy aspect. So when he was in this asylum when he was younger, he fell in love with Naomie Harris's character, and they have this love story where that's one thing in the world that matters to him. Yes, he's a sociopathic villain, serial killer character, but he had one sort of heart in his life that he kind of stood by, and it was taken away from him, and he lost control, and he did all these terrible things. And once he breaks out of prison, once he gets a taste of Eddie Brock's blood and gets the carnage inside of him and gets that symbiote inside of him, he's able to break out and to go find Naomie Harris's character and start up that romance that they had. And I think some aspects of it was they were trying to make, Carnage's character a little sympathetic, and I think that effort was it's a valiant effort. I think to have a sympathetic villain, at least they tried to have a villain that had a little more to him than just, Carlton Drake, where he just wanted to send rockets up into space and get some symbiotes and do all these things. Like, who cares about that? At least they tried with Carnage's character. I just thought Naomie Harris just came off as kind of pointless in this movie. She didn't really have a good role. I think there was an interesting aspect where they could have dealt with, because her character has these like sonic screams, which is a weakness against the symbiotes, against Venom and Carnage. And so there was some like sort of difficulty in the marriage of those characters because one was the weakness of the other. And I thought that could have been an interesting idea that they could have played against, but they don't really do that too often. They kind of touch upon it, but they don't just, really add any more depth into it than what I just said here. And there was also the rom-com elements in terms of Venom and Eddie Brock. They go through the whole rom-com classic, cliched story arc where, they're together, things are not going well, they break up and they separate from each other and they do things on their own for a little while and it's just not working and they find their way back into each other. There's a big apology scene and all is good with Venom and Eddie. And that's his story in this movie, and I think a lot of it is very funny. The beginning of the movie with Eddie and Venom just, having that banter, having that couple, argument, or I guess at times it was like a sibling-like arguments that they had, and sometimes it was a couple-like argument that they were having, and that's what I thought really worked when they were like, a couple that's arguing, bickering with each other, that are trying to live with each other, but things are just kind of a mess around the apartment, and that stuff was as corny and campy as some of the crazy stuff in the first one. And so they really, really dove into that aspect of this character. And you know what? Fine, go for it. I think it makes him very endearing, very likable, very relatable too. I think that Tom Hardy is great in this kind of over-the-top campy role where he's, talking to himself and doing this physical performance with Eddie and with Venom and all these different things. I think he is great for those aspects of it, which makes his character so likable, which is why I like the direction that they're going with this character. And so, you know what? All this is fine. It's goofy, it's campy, it's kind of ridiculous. Who cares about all of that? And the plot is just kind of like, it's okay. There's some great action beats in this movie with Carnage, just kind of wrecking things, and I wish there was more of that. And again, when I get into more of the spoiler territory with how this movie wraps up, it just kind of like Venom interrupts the wedding, and they have a fight, and essentially, Venom just kind of eats Carnage and Cletus Kasady, and that's the end of Carnage and Cletus Kasady, and that's just kind of, it felt a little hollow to me because I want more of Carnage. I wanted him to really, break out and be crazy and be, killing all these people, and I wanted him to go insane, and I wanted more of that. But the fact that, at least the way this movie presents it, that's it for Carnage, and that's just kind of a disappointment to me because I want to see more from this character. And yeah, even though I didn't really like Woody Harrelson as his character in terms of what I wanted from that character, it still is a bummer that maybe the symbiote still isn't around where that symbiote can attach itself to another character that could be darker and could be more of the version of Carnage that I want to see. And maybe that's still a possibility, but they don't present that idea that Carnage is still out there in this movie itself. They still could, explain away that there's some part of the symbiote that's survived and is somewhere, wiggling around on the ground and is finding a new host. Sure, maybe that's still a possibility, but as the movie presents itself, that is not the case. There's also a really terrible subplot with the cop character that ties into Naomie Harris's character, and I just didn't care about that storyline whatsoever. Whenever it kept on cutting from, the Cletus Kasady and Eddie Brock fights to Naomie Harris and this cop character fight, I just didn't care. And there's a weird moment towards the end of the movie where, after the villains are all defeated and the bell, crushes what's-her-face, Naomie Harris's character, and this guy is still tied up on the roof of the building, and this cop character, and his eyes start glowing. And it's like, why? What was the point in that? What does that mean? I don't understand that whatsoever. And it's just kind of like, I guess she gave him the power somehow to do that, and now he can... I don't know what they were doing with that whatsoever. It was like a 2-second shot of his eyes glowing, and then it just cuts to black, and it was just like thrown in there, shoehorned in there so much, and I just didn't understand what they were doing with that. It just made no sense. And for my comic-loving people, I think there was one Easter egg that my friend pointed out that I don't know anything about the comics, really. I'm not too knowledgeable in that, but there is a moment when Carnage is breaking out of the prison where he starts attacking this one cop character, and he's saying that he has a family and, like, kids, and, Venom does a weird thing. I think it's in the trailer where his, like, tongue or some, like, thing from his body just like goes into his mouth, and it was a very weird moment. But apparently that could possibly lead to the character of Toxin in the comics, which is kind of like, you know, an offspring of both Venom and Carnage. Is like sort of like an offshoot of both of them, and so I guess that could technically be what that is. But again, I don't know. That's what my friend said. He thinks that that might be important in the future, but who knows? That could be cool to have this Toxin character be the next sort of villain character maybe inside of the Venom universe. But outside of that, I think overall this movie has some really goofy moments. I think some of it works. I think the tone of this movie works better than the first one because it knows what it is. It is self-aware. I think this movie is a very, very entertaining bad movie. Like, especially when you have Mrs. Chen's character talking through the voice of Venom, and you have Michelle Williams' character, and especially the character of Dan, which is Michelle Williams' like boyfriend character. He was kind of great in this movie. I really liked Dan. You know, he had a moment at the end of the movie where he was shooting fire, and he's like saying, "Oh, you know, I brought the fire and the sound, but not the sound," or some stupid line like that that rivals the Toad and the Lightning line from X-Men. It was so campy and just kind of trashy, but I loved it. I thought it was so goofy and just silly. But those are my thoughts on Venom: Let There Be Carnage, the movie itself. But is that worth watching? I think it is for one very particular reason, which, like I said, the after credit scene was a good one, and I want to talk about it. And as you guys can see with the background of my video, yes, it has to do with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. So essentially, Venom and Eddie Brock are going on vacation. They're like in a bungalow somewhere in Hawaii or something like that. They're on vacation, and that's how the movie ends. They kind of, you know, they're on the run. They kind of go on vacation, and something weird happens around the room. They start being like warped and teleported. The room that they're in kind of transforms into a nicer looking version of that same, you know, bungalow room thing. And on the TV is J. Jonah Jameson, J.K. Simmons as that character, outing Spider-Man, Tom Holland as Spider-Man, Peter Parker as Spider-Man, and Venom kind of licks Peter Parker's face on the TV, which is very weird, which is in line with the tone of this movie, but like, you know what, sure. But that officially puts Venom in the MCU, Tom Hardy's Venom in the MCU, and planting him in the world of Spider-Man No Way Home in that timeline, which is pretty much a guarantee that Tom Hardy and Venom and Tom Holland are all going to be in Spider-Man No Way Home, which is so cool to see. I know that's been rumored and kind of speculated about for so long now, and there's been leaks and rumors and all these sort of things, but now we have it officially the case, and I absolutely love that because, like I said in this review, I really like Tom Hardy as Venom. I really like that relation between Eddie Brock and Venom, and as you saw in this movie, they were kind of like dealing with a breakup situation. I think that there is a situation where Venom leaves Eddie Brock for Peter Parker and Spider-Man because that could be a potentially a better host for him, and that just doesn't work out because, you know, the way that things go in the comics, and then it goes back to Eddie Brock. And then maybe there's some sort of vendetta against, you know, from Venom, you know, having some vendetta against Peter Parker for kind of rejecting him, even though he was a more suitable host for him. And so I think that could be a storyline that they do in the future with Sony's Spider-Man universe if Sony decides to take Spider-Man back for themselves to integrate into, you know, Venom and Morbius, because I know Vulture is in the Morbius trailer and all these different things, but that just kind of solidifies the fact that in Spider-Man No Way Home, we're going to have a full Sinister Six, which is really cool. So my guesses, my predictions for that, obviously we have Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, we have Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, we have Jamie Foxx's Electro, so those three are for sure confirmed, plus now Tom Hardy's Venom. So that's four that are confirmed to be in this movie upcoming in December. And what are the other two that could possibly be? I would say probably Vulture. I would say Vulture is probably a safe bet to say that he's going to be in the movie as one of those, you know, villains in the Sinister Six. And I would go ahead and throw in there probably maybe you have Scorpion, which was teased in the after credit scene from Spider-Man Homecoming. And also I would say possibly there's a chance that it could be Sandman or the Lizard, which, you know, people speculated that from the trailer. But I think the Sandman thing was just a pile of dirt being thrown into the air. And I think the Lizard thing was just a shadow in the background that could possibly actually be Venom. And so I think all of those things are a possibility, and I'm very excited for that movie, and I'm very excited for Tom Hardy to officially be in the MCU, to being warped into this reality, and we're having all these multiverse things that are happening, that are crossing over, that are all kind of points, all those things that are branching off in Loki, all those things are starting to happen, things are getting shaken up, things are being thrown in different universes, and I could not be more excited to see that culminate in both Spider-Man No Way Home and, of course, in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, with Sam Raimi directing that, and the possibility of, you know, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire coming back as different Spider-Men. All this is super exciting to me. And so overall, I think this movie is worth watching that after credits scene. But if you really hated the first Venom movie, you're not going to like this one. I don't think it's going to change your mind. I think it might be marginally better just because it knows what it is and is fully self-aware, unlike the first one. But it's just a very fun, entertaining bad movie. So that is my review and my thoughts and my spoilery reaction to the after credit scene and to Venom, Let There Be Carnage. What did you guys think of the entire movie? Let me know in the comments down below. What did you think of that whole toxin possibility, or that one random cop guy with the glowing eyes, or with the whole after credit sequence? I want to hear all of you guys' thoughts on everything about this film. So thanks guys for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content just like this one, just like this review, and I hope to see you all in my next review.